members, because there's the coherency requirement of structural models is higher. That's only temporary like this because there's not been this kind of learning curve. But that was a challenge for me, and I will show later how we now training AI to do this as well. I mean, if you look close at these, they're very incoherent, they're missing members, missing elements. And also these attempts which I tried, they don't have structural logic really. It's kind of pretend. Anyway, so that leads me to this recent study. The last 10, 15 years we worked on tectonism. They're not building many build examples, so AI cannot learn it yet. And I will now go into this latest stage of parametricism. You can see it looks even more versatile and rich than the world of parametricism. And the forms, instead of just being NURB surfaces or blobs or subdivision surfaces, let's say certain Maya geometry, they have anticlastic, tensile, meaning minimal surfaces, active bending, inflatable surfaces, compression only surfaces, conic, developable surfaces, all kind of technical range of geometries is much more rich and diverse, and we can have an eye for this. And then there's all these reticulations and patternings, which are coherent. Patterning before we only had gray or white. So this is the world of tectonism, which is much more rich than the earlier stages of parametricism, because there's a full integration of structure engineering, but also fabrication, robotic fabrication, etc., built into it. Structural optimization, like topology optimization, etc. We come to this. So this is a series of my writings and books, and the latest book came out last year, Tectonism, is describing this, and that is what AI can do, and it's much harder to work on also as a designer, because you need to learn a lot of the engineering logics and a lot of the plugins into Grasshopper, let's say, but it's still very available, because it just isn't, and all these plugins have tutorials, so you have mesh relaxation, and you can form find. You don't stand there and model, you run algorithms which find the right form. And that's much more beautiful, coherent, and faster, but also has an originality. So tectonism is the most advanced stage of parametricism, and implies the expressive heightening, and that's something I'll come to, what that means, of engineering and fabrication-based form finding and optimization processes. So everything is run through engineering logics, but you can compose freely, because the big advance of this type of engineering is all prior engineering was actually constricted to platonic forms, more or less to symmetrical composition, largely. Repetition of elements is highly irrational now if you can do more sophisticated. But here you can do very irregular plans and run a vault across this, which is fully optimized. A full equilibrium vault on a randomly freeform plan. Or you take a structure and you have run a railway, the position points are irregular, there might be a bridge hitting there, so it's totally asymmetric condition. You can run into poly optimization and resolve that beautifully in a differentiated structure which takes all of this into account, which is absolutely impossible to calculate in the traditional engineering, where you have to think about pure systems, like a trussing system or Varendale system, or pillar post system, etc. But these new structures are a mixture of all of those, where all connections are moment connections, etc. And pieces are partly in bending, partly in compressions. So with the objective to increase information richness and legibility in the built environment, I come to that. So for architects, this engineering optimization is wonderful, because your buildings become lighter, eventually cheaper, etc. But what we are interested in, and we'll come to that, is they have a more richer identity, unique identity, they have legibility. You can understand what's going on. You're in the building, and something is happening in the structure, and you see, this is the bridge hitting in. Or there's a vault, and you'll see where the forces flow, and it tells you, this is the entrance, the big opening. This legibility, which you cannot get in a modernism, is what I'm looking for. So this is the New World, and this is parametricism before the Tectonism advance, which is a massive advance in rationality, because when we did these designs, under the 3D surface, we had massive poche of bizarre structure, just doing something which we wanted for social and spatial purposes, but now we can integrate this. So in what I think, this one is much more the endless forms of nature than this. So within parametricism, you can have massive advances. If you compare, for instance, high-tech, something like Hong Kong HSBC or the Centre Pompidou, and compare this to the Bauhaus of 1920s, there's a massive advance within one paradigm. And here we're having a massive advance within a new paradigm. So Tectonism matured in the last 15 years. These things take time. So again, I came out with the concept of parametrism 15 years into the actual development. Tectonism recently formalized and canonized 15 years after its development. So we have a totality of 30 years. First 15 years, then I said parametricism. Another 15 years, I say Tectonism. And there will be more coming. But it's interesting, so like high-tech is distinct from early modernism, this Tectonism is also quite distinct. You can see it and notice it when you see it, and it's more diverse. Okay, so just some more examples of this. It doesn't mean it's always super expensive, there's simple tensile structures. I just want to show you that we're talking here about, let's say, paradigms, methodologies, but also styles, which I think we should understand as a very profound concept. There is something very profound when you move from the Gothic into the Renaissance, into the Baroque, into Neoclassicism, into eclecticism, expressive modernism, etc. Something is fundamental. And even in the 20th century, there was, these manifestos and books. We need to know that, we need to understand it, because this sequence of styles is tracking socioeconomic epochs of societal development. That's my argument. So I'm talking about epochal styles. And then there are, between epochs, there are transitional styles, and then there's subsidiary styles like white modernism, or functionalism, brutalism, metabolism, high-tech. These are subsidiary styles of modernism. And in parametrism, I mentioned a few subsidiary styles. Fordism, globalism, swarmism, tectonism, that's a big step. So that's my theory of styles, but it's most important to understand that we have socioeconomic epochs. So these are the great styles of architecture. They're only the epochal styles. I'm not having here the subsidiary or transitional styles. The first architectural style was actually the Renaissance. Why am I saying this? Let's say if you have the Romanesque or medieval, there's no architecture in a sense, there's only self-built vernacular. It's craft. There's no architect, no authors. Even the Gothic cathedral, you don't know who done them. They were, they were building troops, they were contractors. They didn't design properly. They wanted a complete set of drawings. It was just starting to build, staking out and building up these arches. And they were quite sophisticated, but it's not architecture in the sense where we now know. Whereas the Renaissance, you have full-on architecture the way we know it. We recognizing Alberti, Palladio, Serlio as our colleagues. Why? Because they did complete sets of drawings. They simulated the visual impression through perspective, light and shadow, And they wrote treatises, theory of architecture, because if you do something innovative, you have to explain why we're doing this. If you do something vernacular in the tradition, you keep doing what's always been done. There's no questions asked, no answers demanded, but if you dramatically innovate, you have to have, first of all, convince and tell people what you're going to do, because it will look different. So you have to make a full set of drawings, including the perspectives. And you have to write why this makes sense. So architecture is authors who innovate, who take full responsibility for something original and new. They present in full sets of drawings their vision, and they have a theoretical underpinning. And these are the ingredients of architecture, which didn't exist prior to Alberti. And we still do that. And that's why it's so important that, we realize it. But then the Renaissance was socioeconomically the echo of the early capitalism in the city-states, the northern Italian city-states. It was a particular socioeconomic formation. It moved into the Baroque when you had larger organization states. For instance, France under Louis XIV integrated nation-state, integrated economy with massive buildings like Versailles complex as a government complex. You could not design this in Renaissance style. This is maybe another lecture. Because the Baroque can make much more integrated parts, curvature, binding things together, deep relief, colossal order for distance viewing. And you can make, the parts are asymmetric, they create massive symmetrical complexes you can comprehend. Whereas the Renaissance is very additive. So the Baroque can express the capital of a nation state like France of the 17th century, or the Vatican, which was a global institution. The Vatican was ruling across all of Europe in many ways, and if you look at this complex of St. Peter's, that's necessarily the Baroque style is the only style you can comprehend. Then you have whole city developments like Karlsruhe and all the absolutism. So mercantilism, absolutism generates is the Baroque, and then neoclassicism, the 19th century, after the French Revolution. All of that Baroque and Rococo disappeared. And you had a new society, and this is the society of neoclassicism and historicism. And they have to first understand they have architectural competitions, and they're doing many more things. They're doing museums, ministry buildings, universities. Before it was only palaces and churches. Now there's many more things, and there's a different spirit. So that's when we have historicism, and of course, modernism is a huge different society. It's a mechanical mass production, industrial society. It's the socialist revolutions after the First World War, revolution in Russia, revolution in Austria, revolution in Germany, social democracy, plus industrialization. That's modernism. So these styles make no sense in themselves. They make sense as matching up with major socioeconomic epochs. They're lining the epochal styles of architecture. And parametricism is one of those. Why? It's the whole collapse of socialist world, which was the most far-reaching and logical expression of the era of mass mechanical production Fordism. England was the socialist economy, more or less, and so on. So you have actually the microelectronic revolution and telecommunication revolution through the 70s and 80s, which led on to Margaret Thatcher, led on to Ronald Reagan. It's neoliberalism, it's transformation of China through Deng Xiaoping, the re-emergence of capitalism, the breakdown of many big, even capitalist bureaucracies. It was a network of smaller firms. Moving away from this kind of greenfield, sleeping cities and factory and office complex in the green, everything concentrating back and in the center of the city. So it's a dramatic socio-economic transformation. And it should have an expression in the built environment and in architecture, and that's parametricism. It has, of course, then a series of subsidiary styles, so wherever you move from these big revolutions, you can't get it right immediately. There's some kind of brainstorming, evolutionary searching period. So you have at the end of, for instance, neo-historicism, you have actually eclecticism, where you start collaging these things, or you have Art Nouveau and Expressionism, and then modernism comes in. So you have very short, this is a 10-year period, 15, 20-year period of transitional styles before you have 60 years of modernism. And similarly, this transformation to parametrism wasn't overnight. There was postmodernism, about 10, 15 years, and deconstructivism for about 10 years. And then we established this. The problem is that this hasn't yet taken over the world. Like this. So this is the world, when Fordism, this is under modernism, mechanical mass production, they can only produce millions of the same thing. And the whole economy is maybe 5 things: a car, a prefabricated house, a washing machine, maybe a packaged holiday, industrialized food. I mean, I grew up like this in the 60s. So they were going to 5 to 10 things and produce en masse, which means everybody will have the same standard of living. It's called the universal consumption standard. It means sociological something. It's all because of the prosperity gains were massive. In Germany in the 1960s, everybody of 60 million had that car, that house, that flowing water, that television with 1 channel and then soon 2 channels, a packaged holiday, industrial food, and everybody the same. There's no point in having 5 cars. There's no point in having, eating kind of 25 meals. So it means physically you have to have an egalitarian society. And but now we have 1,000 TV channels, right? And it's a totally different thing. It's huge differentiation of products. So suddenly it makes sense to have a lot of sociological differentiation, a lot of income differentiation, a lot of dynamism. And where are these people now, which used to be here? What are they doing? They're doing research development, marketing, finance, reprogramming the robots. This technology, you could not absorb many innovations. You have a new idea? No, we're going to do another 5 million of this before this plant is, it's all fixed. Here, every day you can have an innovation and reproduce it. Or even more dramatically, software as a service, a new app, a new update. Every minute, you can have a new product brought to billions of people. So it pays everybody working in the knowledge economy on innovation and so on. Where are they going to work? In the cities. How are they going to work? In teams, connecting up with new product needs. You have to look at marketing, new material research, new science, new financing mechanisms, new advertising, promoting a market. So you need to connect across. Before this was, for 30 years you do the same thing. You don't have to communicate. Bang, 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 bang. In these bureaucracies. Now it's network. Communication, collaboration, networks of companies. So it's a totally different world, and the architecture looks different. And that's the city, not this kind of modernist Brasilia or something.
London.
And yeah, it's R&D and finance, marketing, etc., continuously new. And if you're not in the center of things, seeing what everybody else is doing in the company, with other companies, going in the evening to this exhibition, to this launch, to this conference, and staying in the pub and debating. The next morning, you didn't get all these new inputs. So what you're doing this week potentially wakes